Hello, Simon Kennedy Ellis.
Hello, you.
Hello. Hello, Simon Kennedy Ellis.
Nice, David Lee Miller. Nice to hear your voice.
David Lee Miller, like David Lee Roth. Or Dave Lee Travis.
David Lee Roth. There's a blast from the past.
I know. It's nice to hear your voice too. And can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Have you recovered from our fairly wide-ranging and sort of politically deep and spiky chat last week? How was your week after that?
It was all okay. I think you got a little hotter with that conversation than I did.
I think I did. I think that's maybe what I'm saying. I think that's maybe what I'm asking. It's like,
so when you're saying "How are you?" you're actually asking yourself, "How am I?"
I think I'm self-soothing because last week I think I got quite animated.
This is a podcast in which two friends talk about the pleasures, absurdities, and imperfections of being human. I'm Simon Ellis.
And I'm Lee Miller. Welcome to Midlifing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think it was my fault, but it's hard, isn't it? It's one of the things I love about you, David Lee Miller. Lee David Miller. It's one of the things I love about you, which is you wear your care on your sleeve.
I do feel things, but the other thing that's important to remember about me is that I'm a little bit like an Etch-a-Sketch. If you give me a good shake, it'll all disappear in a minute. And I've forgotten why I was across, and then it's like, oh, should we have a sandwich?
If we got in a dance studio together, I could actually literally give you an Etch-a-Sketch. And
I don't know that you could, because I'm quite big.
Oh, I know, but I'm quite strong, and I know how to move bodies around.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's that's an advert for anybody who needs a body moving.
Yeah, so anyone needs their bodies moved, info at midlifing.net, and just put attention Simon in the subject line, because Lee's not going to...
I'm not going to help you move your body, but if you've gotten bored of moving your own body...
Can you feel your body talk? Your body talk.
Simon's going to come around and give you a little shake. It'll be fine.
Yeah, it won't last long, and it's free. Although the cost of the trains depends on where you are. Shit. Yeah.
If you're in a bike ride of Simon's house, he will come and shake your body for free.
All our listeners in Pakistan,
you're gonna have to stump up the cash for the flight. Oh, actually, no, it's gonna have to be the train and the boat and the train. Anyway,
and the three.
It's
boats
funny that
and
you
should say hitchhiking.
A bit of hitchhiking, yeah. It's funny you should say bodies and shaking, because this has been the content that I have been holding on to for a while.
Oh, that's right. I actually keep forgetting that you've kept a bit of content in your pocket for a long time now.
Yeah.
Now's the moment. Do you think now's the moment to get it out of your pocket?
Well, my anxiety is that it's not even going to be worth talking about.
Oh, you can never know. We never know.
Exactly. It might be one of those things that you just go, yeah, great, okay, and then we're done. But anyway, here's my question.
I've got if that happens, I've got a little story from a couple of weeks ago that I think I could fill in. Anyway, go.
Brilliant. Well, this is the thing that I've been musing on. A dog came up to me it's quite a while ago now. A dog that is not my dog. And a dog that I do not know particularly well. And it was very enthusiastic and effusive. Not inappropriately so, not jumpy up, not licky, just like very waggy and like, hi.
Yeah.
And I stopped to say hello to it. And I also noticed a slight recoil in myself, like, ooh, I'm touching this gross little animal. And I thought, oh, that's fascinating, because I always thought I liked dogs. And then I realised, oh, I like my dogs. And I like the dogs that I know. And that made me start to think about the relationship between touch and fondness.
Oh.
And so I realised that I love Jeffrey because he is as everybody knows, my best friend, my boyfriend, and my husband. I've made this clear on multiple occasions. And I touch him a great deal. I put my hands on his face, I put my hands on his back, I grab hold of his little feet. Sometimes as I walk past him, I just like run my hand from his nose all the way down his back, right to the tip of his tail, and just like go boop at the end. So he's constantly in a space of connection with me. And the same is true of Bob. I'm slightly less acquisitive in my touch, in the sense that I will not grab her in public, or, you know, just like, well, actually probably as I walk past her in the house, I will absolutely run my hands over her. And these are two things that I care about and love deeply. And I was just wondering, as touch becomes, or at least for me, feels less and less appropriate, and because there's lots of conversations about consent, which is wholly appropriate and is in some respects a follow-on from last week, but as touch becomes less and less appropriate in a, you know, like we might feel less confident about hugging our colleagues at work in a particular moment of distress or joy because HR. Do we start to become more removed from one another? What's the relationship for you between touch and care?
So you know this, but maybe listeners don't. Certainly the dance training I went through, making physical contact with people it happened all of the time. All of the time, in the studio, outside of the studio, hugging, very warm physical contact. In the studio, it's happening in the context of the training. Those contacts are unusual contacts. So, you know, across your back, across your spine, the backs of the legs, knees, feet, all sorts of things. So, and of course, so much of that is about what we're able to learn about our own bodies as a consequence of being in contact with other human beings. And it's vast. I think if the thing that's probably influenced and sensitized me to movement, sensation in my body has been through touch and contact, so making contact with other human beings. And so I want to, that's a preface, and it's a way of prefacing this conversation to say that I think it's fundamental, and certainly there is plenty of science about newborns who are not touched, right, who are effectively not held by their mothers or by their parents, and who become, you know, it's really, really, really troubling for human beings when we are divorced from physical contact with other human beings. So that's the preface. And of course, somewhere along the line, the idea of asking for consent in dance classes happened. Do you mind if I touch you? Do you mind if I hold your hand? I did it the other day with a PhD student. You'll laugh. I said, do you mind? We were talking about a very particular thing along these lines. I said, do you mind if I hit your foot? I said, I won't hit it hard. It'll just be light. But do you mind? No, not at all. I hit a foot. So I understand the importance of that. But I also think, and this is where my my tendency towards conservatism steps in, I also think something is lost by the kind of constant referral to, do you mind if? Right? I think there are all sorts of things gained, but I think there's something lost, and that something lost is about a particular kind of openness and welcoming. And again, I appreciate the flip side of that. I really, really do. Welcoming for who? Open for who? You know, because there are certainly many people who, you know, being touched is not pleasant at all. But I've also had experiences in dance classes as a teacher where Oh no, not as a teacher, but kind of as a mentor, where, and this is very common in dance, for someone in the dance class to make the political stand about consent, but only in order to effectively disrupt the class. Like you can see it's an irrelevant thing to say in the context of the people in the group, but they're making their stand and then effectively they're dropping a consent grenade into the class. And I've definitely had those experiences. So I'm not quite sure where I'm going with that, other than to say that I long for it. It's one of the most difficult things about living by myself, but I also touch people far less than I used to. And I think I'm touched far less than I used to be touched. How have you finished that sentence? So anything in there?
Yeah, I was just really, that was a really rich response, Simon. Thank you. I was just enjoying listening to you and thinking that through, because it sort of various things surface for me. As you know, my training as a performer is not in body-based practices. I came to those later on. Mine was it was actor training techniques, which, while there is a bodily cognition in play, more often than not, you are in a solo relationship. You are working out your body in space rather than what you can understand through another body, because it's more about, not exclusively. There's lots of there's lots of touchy stuff that happens in an acting space, but I think you spend a little bit more time in an interior world. Well, a lot more time in an interior world, thinking about how do I feel. So the proprioception is less a physical proprioception. I'm not even sure if this is the right word for it, but it's more kind of like an emotional proprioception. Oh, how do I make myself
You're interpreting.
Feel that
You're
thing?
interpreting.
Yeah.
You're interpreting your body. I feel this way.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
And exactly. And if I move myself like this, does this do anything to my interior felt state? Yeah. So just like really simple things, like if do you build the character from the inside out or the outside in? And a lot of training techniques are from the inside out.
Yeah.
It's
How
how
much tension in my body? How relaxed?
Oh no,
is my body?
Actually, when I say the inside out, I kind of mean the opposite. I mean more like how do I trigger in my emotional state something which feels the same. So I've got to do something sad. I'll think about a sad thing. Yeah. That's one. That's one way of doing it. Whereas the other one is like, how do I what's happening in my shoulders? If my shoulders become tense, what does that communicate to me, to the audience? What happens if I move from my, if I lead from the sternum rather than if I lead from the hips? What happens there? What does that do to how I feel? What does that, so you can, there's these balancing acts that happen, but I think, my training, at any rate, was less about other people laying their hands on me and asking me to think about moving from there, and more about the intellectual exercise of, okay, so locate your center and then move that center around. Where do you live, and where does the character live? Is it in the same place? And it's, there's a little bit about how far away you're traveling from yourself, and some of it is, just literally physical. Like, if I move from the knees, how do I feel versus if I move from the heart? So
I was just moving from my knees. I quite like that. It's quite weird.
It does really, really interesting things if you kind of remove.
Yeah, I feel a little bit. It makes me feel a little bit uncertain or a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, if you
try it at home, everyone, move from your knees.
Well, if you give somebody a cue to move from what you might think of as your third eye, the space just above and in between your your eyebrows.
I thought you were going for a whole different thing there. With okay, go on.
No, not from your root chakra. That's a whole different thing.
Third eye blind.
But if you move from there, what does that do? And then it's like, okay, now really, it's not a very big shift, probably like 4 or 5 inches. Now move from the chin, and those are two really. Does one make you feel more intellectually driven? Does one make you feel more kind of what's the status and power dynamics? These
powerful,
are so the body absolutely is part of it, but it has been historically, for me at any rate, a training that is about understanding myself rather than understanding myself in relationship to others.
Through touch.
exactly through touch.
or not through. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Go
not
on.
yeah. Well, the touch might be even my own, and I'm not even sure I ever laid hands on myself to think about that. It was more like, oh, I'm just sort of, I'm traveling the energy down and moving from there. But I'm also aware that when I was training to be an actor, I was coming out of being a fat kid, and I was still very, very, very self-conscious in my body.
Still hungover from that.
Oh, and so there were lots of things that I couldn't do. I couldn't access because I couldn't allow myself to. I couldn't let my chest lead because I felt very self-conscious about the fact that I'd carried weight on my chest as a child, and so I felt like I felt feminine in that sense. I felt it felt like it unmanned me in a way that I didn't want to expose. So I could never step into that space, which is curious because actually I think all that led to in my performance was ensuring that I looked less confident and more tentative. If I had just been able to park that sense of,
You might have ended up on the bill if you'd bloody figured that out.
Yeah, maybe. But also I think, that none of that was possible because of who I was and how my body was.
Sure.
But that also makes me realise that I could not have had a body-based training because I would never, ever have been able to welcome touch.
Yeah.
So I understand those questions about consent as well. Please don't touch me there. I feel deeply uncomfortable about myself. And this is not about your hands on me. This is about me becoming aware of myself in a way that I feel really unhappy about.
Yeah. And I really want to stress, I really understand the consent thing. I really do. But
I heard you say that.
I led a movement thing amongst our staff a couple of months ago amongst the team, and I said, so we're going to sit on the floor. Just check with the floor it's okay that it's going to be sat on. And then so I basically became a kind of running thing throughout the thing. Just check with your zipper on your jacket that it's okay to take your top off at this point, And so we were just and I was trying to make it playful about the kind of the consent thing as opposed to making it a ridiculous thing. But of course, it does both. It did both of those things.
Yeah, because it makes the people who feel anxious feel mocked. Or has the potential to? It has the potential to make.
And I hope so. Not in that context, because I know the people pretty well. But yes,
no.
Right.
I'm thinking about somebody who hears this rather than the people that you're working with, and you know how things because you've worked with them before. I wasn't again. That's not offered as a critique. It's more.
No, but I agree. Out of the context of that, it might sound yes, exactly, completely.
So that was what I was coming into, and the longer tail of the conversation, to go back to Jeffrey, I think was about how fondness, or perhaps a particularly deep sense of connection to somebody, requires physical contact. And I don't know. It was an open, genuine question. Not I wasn't putting a thesis statement forward where I believe we need to touch in order to, because I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, that would be my thesis.
See last week for parasocial conversations.
Yeah. I think one of the things that happened as I was dancing more and more, of course, was that I sought touch from other men outside of the context of dance in a way that I had never been comfortable with. So I hugged my like cousins and men in a way that I think, particularly in New Zealand, was just didn't happen. And I remember not this is not asking consent. These are sort of family relationships. But even then, it would have. I mean, I think I probably should have in a way. If I had my current eyes, my contemporary eyes on my past eyes, if you understand what I mean. I remember those feelings of, the kind of, I'll say the rigidity of male hugs, and then of course the hugging this was, and then of course the patting on the back, the back pat. And my friend and I actually, this was. Maybe this must have been in the early 90s. We had a thing which was when we were hugging, we'd hug each other. We would have this idea which we would try not to be the first person to leave the hug. And so we'd end up with I'd have very long, beautiful, beautiful hugs. And so I've thought a lot about the nature of hugging. That's for sure. How we hold ourselves in hugs, how soft they are, how tense, as a very simple, perhaps the most common, other than handshaking, the most common way of greeting another human being or to say goodbye is to hug. Meaning through physical contact, that is.
Yeah, yeah.
Although in Italy, of course, you'd kiss. You'd just, although you kind of miss-kiss as they do.
Air kiss.
Air kiss, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think it does touch. It sort of harks back to our conversation last week in a way, which is, and I just wish, it's not a regret so much because I caught up. It's nothing like 40 years of dancing to catch you up, but which is that, and I'm thinking about growing up in New Zealand as young boys, as boys and men, was that any kind of sense of intimacy, of physical intimacy, was the only kind was loaded in violence or coded in violence.
Yeah.
And wow, what a environment to live through. And I was one of the capable ones, meaning physically capable. I wasn't fat. I wasn't, I was athletic. I was coordinated, all the things. I fitted in just fine. Yeah. But even then for me, it makes me deeply, deeply sad. And I don't, maybe it's a little different now. I think, I don't know.
It's funny you should say, is it maybe a little bit different now? So I
definitely don't know in New Zealand, just to say.
No, I can't speak to New Zealand, but I will just reflect upon something that I saw yesterday on the train home from work. So, as everybody knows, I live a relatively fair distance from work, and I work from home, I drive to work, and I train to work. And I try to drive maybe, if I'm in like 3 or 4 times that week, I will try to drive a maximum of 2 days a week and then take the train the other 2 days. And so yesterday was one of the days where I was able to, it was necessary for me to take the train in and home, because I really needed to get a lot of work done. And it's a 2.5-hour train trip, because there's a 15-minute layover between stations. And
to change trains?
I have to change trains once, and it's only like it's a 15-minute wait for the connecting train, and then it's just like 9-10 minutes on that connecting train.
Oh yeah, that's just the end. It's just the end part of it.
Exactly, it's just the end part of it. So I get the majority of the work done on that the kind of the first big leg, or the second big leg if I'm going home. And it was great. I just blasted through my list of jobs, and by like 9:30 I was like, I'm clean and clear. All those things that have been hanging over me this week that I absolutely
What about
the
choreographic practices editorial? Did you get to that? Motherfucker.
That is, no offence, that is a long way down the list of things I'm going to lose sleep about this week.
Well, I've stuck it on my list anyway, so you don't have to worry about it.
Oh, cheers. Anyway, I was on the train home, and there was a problem with the train in front of us. So it maybe added another 30 minutes on my journey, and we were just stuck at this station. And these three lads from Spain had come on at the previous station. So this was, if anybody's interested, they got on at Plymouth, and we were stuck at Ivy Bridge. And they came on with bags of McDonald's. And these guys were, somewhere between, I guess, 17 and 22. In that kind of that window where it's really difficult to be confident. They could have been mature-looking late teenagers. They could have been youthful-looking early 20-year-olds. Not quite sure what.
Yeah, certainly. They were definitely McDonald's age, though.
Definitely McDonald's age. And they were ebullient and effusive, and they were talking loudly and in Spanish because they were from Spain. And
is that the point of the story?
Yeah, the end. And they were doing that thing where they were talking to other people on phones with the speakers on. And so there was just all sorts of stuff that was... It required me to pull in my attention into myself so that I didn't start to get frustrated in their behaviours.
Or
because,
stick
of course,
really good noise-cancelling headphones on.
Well, I was actually... Bob had joined the train in Plymouth, and I didn't want to stick noise-cancelling headphones on. I wanted to spend time with Bob. So I was trying to be really present with her so that I wasn't being pulled into their energy and then getting frustrated with them. Because honestly, their behaviours were really, really appropriate and pleasant and sweet and just enthusiastic.
Just noisy.
Just noisy, exactly. But they finished eating their McDonald's, and they were at a 4 table, so 2 on one side and 1 on the other. And the one who had the 2 seats to himself just leaned back after finishing his McDonald's and lifted up his T-shirt. So he lifted it right up above his nipples, so his entire torso is on display. And he's slender, but he has fat. He has he's not got abs. He's got subcutaneous fat. He's got a belly that gently jiggles. Not a lot of belly fat, but he's got belly fat nevertheless. And he grabs hold of his belly and just starts making his belly button talk. And then he just starts to shake it and jiggle it.
Can you let your belly button talk? Let it talk.
And then he like kind of extends his diaphragm so his belly sticks out really, really far, and then he starts beating it like a drum. And he's just like giggling to himself. And then his friends lean over and they start rubbing him. And they start rubbing his belly, and they start patting his belly, and they start sticking their fingers in his belly. And then they start making his belly talk. And it was a moment of such untrammeled joy, Simon. There was no sense that there was, and obviously they could have been saying "you fat fucker." I don't know, because they were talking in Spanish, but whatever was being said was being received with joy, and whatever was being said was being offered with joy, and there was just this beautiful homosocial connection that wasn't about violence, and if it was about teasing, it was consensual because he'd started the game.
Yeah.
Oh, and so beautiful. I don't know if it's changed, except those 3 boys on that train.
They didn't grow up in New Zealand in the 1970s and 80s. This is not quite, there's no belly buttons on display, but I've had 2 or 3 occasions in the last couple of weeks at work where I've made, or physical contact has been made of me, or vice versa, and it's been really lovely. And there's something about the kind of the delicacy and the knowingness of, like just simple, like a touch on the shoulder, really, really simple. And this conversation has made me reflect on just how much I miss being loaded with human contact, which is what it was like when I was dancing, just loaded. Almost at the end you have to go, okay, I need a little break from it. Yeah. But I can't imagine that now. I've so much less physical contact and touch in my life. Yeah. And I miss it. And that story, the story you've just told, is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to say goodbye.
Yeah.
See ya.
Take care, lovely man. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.